All right, so today we're looking at AWS security, but we're going at it a little differently this time, yeah.
Definitely.
We're taking, like, the hacker's point of view.
Right.
We've got this source, AWS Basic 101 for hackers. It's pretty wild. It's like they're showing us all the weak points in AWS, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to approach it.
Totally. And it's not just theory. This is like practical stuff. It's they're giving us the attacker's playbook.
Exactly. And instead of just saying, do this, do that for security, we're figuring out how to think like someone who wants to break in.
Right. It's like knowing how a lock works from both sides.
Exactly.
So you can make it stronger, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the source, it dives right into the nuts and bolts of AWS.
Okay.
Like regions, availability zones, VPCs, IAM. It's almost like they're giving us the blueprints to a building before we try to, like, case the joint.
Yeah, it's really important to understand these fundamentals. Because, for example, availability zones. A lot of people think, oh, my data is stored in one place, so it must be safe. But the way it really works is it's copied across multiple zones.
Oh, interesting.
That's for backup,
Oh, I see.
So even if a hacker gets into one, it doesn't mean they have everything.
Wow, that adds a whole other level to it.
Yeah.
Because then it's not just about, like, breaking into one spot. It's like you need a whole map of the cloud to do some real damage.
Exactly. You have to know the whole, like, layout.
Wow. So this IAM thing, identity and access management.
Yeah.
I feel like we hear about that a lot with those stories, like someone falls for a phishing email.
Oh, right.
And then, boom, the whole company's data is,
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about, really.
So in this case, it's like if IAM isn't set up right, it's like leaving the front door open for these guys.
Exactly. It's poor configuration that opens the door.
And I bet these hackers, they can spot that a mile away, huh?
Oh, absolutely. They're looking for those weak spots.
So this source, it mentions something called S3 buckets. What are those exactly?
So S3 is basically like AWS's giant storage service, right? But if a user like forgets to set the permissions correctly or, just doesn't do it right, all their important stuff, all their data can be left out in the open for anyone to just take.
Yikes. That's scary. It's like leaving your diary open on a park bench.
Yeah, kinda.
So how would someone even find those?
Oh, well, they have tools for that. The source mentions a couple, OSCLI and S3 scanner.
Those sound intense.
Yeah, but it's important to remember, like, we're not telling you about these to encourage bad stuff. It's more like, keep your enemies closer, right?
Right.
It's about understanding the tactics.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Okay, so we talked about those S3 buckets, right? What else are they looking for? Like, what other kind of vulnerabilities?
Okay, so another big one is weak IAM permissions again.
Oh, right.
But this time it's about something called privilege escalation.
Privilege escalation? What's that?
Okay, so imagine a hacker, right? And they get into, say, an account that doesn't have much access, like maybe an intern's login or something.
Okay.
But with this privilege escalation, they can use exploits and stuff to get more and more access.
Oh, no.
Until they basically control the whole system.
So it's like sneaking into a movie theater.
Yeah.
And somehow ending up, like, managing the whole place.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So you've got exposed data, you've got these escalating privileges. It's like AWS security sounds kind of terrifying, to be honest.
It can be. It can be.
Yeah.
But that's why this whole approach, seeing it from the hacker side, it's so valuable.
Oh.
Right? We learn how they exploit these weaknesses so we can make things more secure.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like build stronger defenses from the ground up.
Okay. I'm feeling a little better now.
Good.
But before we get too far, the source mentions ethical hacking. And I kind of want to unpack that a bit because, can you really hack ethically? Isn't that kind of an oxymoron?
Oh, absolutely you can hack ethically. And it's actually a really important part of cybersecurity these days.
Really?
Think about it. Would you rather have some security experts poking around your system trying to find weaknesses?
I guess so.
Or would you rather just wait until an actual bad guy finds them?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot more sense if you put it that way.
Right. And that's where these ethical hackers come in.
Okay.
They're using the same tools, the same techniques as the bad guys.
Wow.
But they have permission and they have very clear rules to follow.
Oh.
So everyone knows what's happening and it's all above board.
Gotcha.
And actually, this source, AWS Basic 101 for hackers, it talks about how important this ethical hacking is. It even mentions these things called bug bounty programs.
Bug bounty programs. What are those? Tell me more.
Okay, so it's like a kind of a reward system for finding vulnerabilities. Companies, like even AWS themselves, they'll offer these bounties.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a lot of money, actually,
Yeah.
to these ethical hackers if they find and report a security flaw.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of a win-win, right?
Right.
The company gets to improve their security,
Yeah.
and the ethical hacker gets recognition, maybe some money.
That's a pretty sweet deal, honestly.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And it's a great way for people who are, interested in cybersecurity
Hmm.
to get some real-world experience
Right.
and build a name for themselves.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So instead of just reading about this stuff, you could actually go out and try it out in the real world,
Exactly.
but legally, safely. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it goes back to that thing we were saying before about understanding both sides.
Right. Right.
So you know how to exploit a vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
but then you also know how to prevent it from happening in the first place.
Right. So what are some of the, I guess, the top things that someone should do if they want to make their AWS, really secure?
Well, one thing that really stuck out to me in this source is how much they emphasize the principle of least privilege.
Okay, the principle of least privilege. Break that down for me.
So it's a really basic idea in security,
Okay.
but it's super important in the cloud.
Okay.
Basically, you only give a user the absolute minimum permissions they need to do their job.
Okay.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Right. So it's like, if you need to get into a house, I'll give you a key to the front door.
Exactly.
But I'm not giving you a key to the garage, the back door, anything like that.
Exactly.
You get what you need, and that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
Exactly. And this source also really stresses using multi-factor authentication.
Right. Right. Everybody says that.
Yeah, but it's important.
Okay.
Especially for those IAM accounts we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's like an extra layer of protection. That makes it way harder for bad guys to get in, even if they somehow get your password.
Yeah, because who remembers those passwords anyway?
Right.
They're always so complicated. All right, so multi-factor authentication. Anything else?
Let's see. Regularly checking your security groups?
Okay, so just making sure everything's still locked down.
Yeah, and up to date. Things change. You got to keep up with it.
Right.
Encrypting data, both when it's just sitting there and when it's being sent somewhere else. And rotating your access keys pretty often.
Oh, okay, so don't keep the same passwords forever.
Pretty much, yeah. It's better to be safe than sorry.
Okay, so it's like a security checklist for your cloud, right?
Exactly. Check for vulnerabilities, update your defenses, and make sure everything is locked up tight.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered a lot of the technical stuff, but this source also mentions something really interesting. The human element.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Because even with all the best tech in the world, if one person clicks a bad link.
It can all be for nothing.
Exactly. So what do they say about that?
Well, they talk about things like security awareness training for employees.
Okay, so people know what to watch out for.
Exactly. And having really strong password policies in place and having a clear plan for what to do if something bad does happen.
Oh, right. Incident response.
Exactly. You don't want to be caught off guard.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having the right tools, but also making sure the people using them are, aware and prepared.
Absolutely. It's like you can have a state-of-the-art security system in your house.
Right.
But if you leave the front door wide open, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
So it's like a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Tech, A&D awareness.
Exactly.
You got to have both.
Absolutely. You can't just focus on one and ignore the other. And this source, it really drives that point home.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
It's not a one-and-done thing. You can't just set it and forget it.
Right, because things are always changing.
Exactly. New threats are popping up all the time.
It's like a constantly moving target.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to stay on top of it.
You got to stay vigilant. You got to adapt. It's kind
Okay.
of like a game of chess,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You have to think several moves ahead, anticipate what your opponent's going to do,
Right.
and be ready to change your strategy if you need to.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
And just like in chess, there's always something new to learn when it comes to cloud security.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We talked about how hackers find vulnerabilities, how to hack ethically, and some key best practices for securing our AWS environment.
Yeah, it's been a good overview.
But there's one question that keeps coming back to me, like, where do we even start?
That's a great question. And actually, the AWS Basic 101 for Hackers Guide talks about that too.
Really? Okay, what do they say?
They say that even if you're not a tech person, like if you're not a developer or security engineer, it's still really important to understand the basics of how AWS works.
Okay, so even if I don't work in IT, I should still have some basic knowledge.
Exactly. Think of it like this. You don't have to be a mechanic to know that driving a car with bald tires is dangerous.
Right.
It's just common sense.
Yeah.
So understanding the basic parts of AWS and how they relate to security, it helps you make better decisions about how you use cloud services in general.
Okay, that makes sense. So besides this source, are there any other resources you recommend for someone who wants to learn more about AWS security?
Absolutely. AWS has a ton of free online training stuff on their website. They have a section called AWS Training and Certification.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's a great place to start. And they even have a course specifically on security fundamentals.
Perfect. What about for people who are interested in like the ethical hacking side of things?
Oh, yeah.
What would you suggest for them?
Well, besides that POCU framework we mentioned before, there are a few online platforms that are really cool,
Okay.
like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. They have these Capture the Flag challenges or CTFs and other hands-on cybersecurity exercises.
CTF challenges, what are those like?
They can be pretty intense,
Oh, wow.
but they're a really fun and engaging way to learn practical cybersecurity skills
Oh, cool.
in a safe environment.
So it's like gamified security training.
Exactly.
I like it. It sounds like there are a ton of resources out there for anyone who wants to learn about this stuff,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
which is great.
And the cybersecurity community is actually super welcoming and supportive.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, there are lots of online forums, blogs, social media groups, all that, where you can connect with other people who are into security, ask questions, share what you know.
That's awesome. It's amazing how much information is out there these days.
I know, right?
You just have to know where to look.
Yeah, exactly.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. We started out feeling kind of intimidated by all this cloud security stuff,
Yeah.
but now I feel a lot more confident. Like I can actually go out and learn more and, take control of my own digital safety.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, for sure.
And remember, security, it's not like a destination. It's an ongoing journey,
Right, it's always evolving.
Exactly. There's always something new to learn, new threats to prepare for, new ways to strengthen your defenses.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into AWS Basic 101 for hackers,
Yeah.
what's like the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
That's easy. Cloud security is everyone's responsibility.
That's a good one.
It doesn't matter if you're a developer, a business owner, or just someone who uses the cloud every day.
Yeah,
Understanding the basics of cloud security is crucial.
totally.
It's how you protect yourself and your data.
For sure. Well said.
It's more important now than ever.
Couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there, stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep learning. We'll see you next time.
So that's where ethical hackers come in. They're like the good guys with the hacker skills.
Yeah.
Using those skills for good.
To find those vulnerabilities before the bad guys do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And this source, AWS Basic 101 for hackers, it actually stresses that this ethical hacking is really important.
Yeah, it's huge.
They even mentioned these things called bug bounty programs.
Mm-hmm.
What are those? I've heard of them, but
Yeah, so they're basically like a reward system
okay.
for finding vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Like companies, even AWS,
Uh-huh.
they'll offer these bounties.
So they're basically like, come hack us, but tell us what you find.
Yeah, pack us responsibly, basically.
Yeah.
And if you find something, we'll give you money.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes it's a lot of money.
Wow. So it's like a win-win for everyone.
Oh, great.
Right?
Yeah.
The company improves their security, and the ethical hackers, they get recognition, maybe some cash.
Yep. And it's a great way for people who want to get into cybersecurity as a career.
Right, right.
To get some experience, build up their reputation.
So this PACU thing, this tool that we talked about earlier that hackers use, that's actually designed for ethical hacking too.
Yes, exactly. That's a great point.
Okay.
So PACU is specifically made for ethical hacking and security assessments.
So instead of just reading about it, you can actually go in a safe environment and like practice.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a virtual hacking lab
Oh, that's cool.
where you can try out all these techniques, see how they work.
Without getting in trouble.
Exactly, without any real-world consequences.
Okay, so it's like a flight simulator, but for cybersecurity.
That's a great way to put it. A flight simulator for hackers.
I like it. Okay, so we talked about the importance of seeing things from both sides,
Yes,
the attacker and the defender.
definitely.
So for the defender, what are some of the most important things to do to make their AWS setup really secure?
Well, something this source really emphasizes is the principle of least privilege.
Okay, the principle of least privilege.
It's a really fundamental security principle,
Okay.
but it's super important when we're talking about the cloud.
Okay, so how does that apply to, like, AWS specifically?
So basically, you only give users the bare minimum permissions they need
Okay.
to do what they need to do. And that's it.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like, you need a key to get into the building, I'll give you a key to the building.
Exactly.
But you're not getting a key to every room.
Exactly. You get what you need, and that's it.
Okay, makes sense.
It minimizes the damage if something goes wrong.
Okay, so that's the principle of least privilege. Anything else?
Multi-factor authentication is a big one.
Right, we touched on that before.
It's really important, especially for those IAM accounts we talked about.
So that's like, even if someone gets your password,
Yeah, it's that extra layer of security.
they still can't get in.
Exactly. They need that second factor.
Okay, good to know.
It's just good practice in general, really.
Right, right. What else? What other things can people do to be proactive about their AWS security?
Regularly auditing your security groups is important.
So checking to make sure things are still locked down.
Exactly. Encrypting data, both when it's being stored and when it's being transmitted.
Okay, so no one can snoop on it while it's moving around.
Exactly. It's like putting it in a lockbox.
Got it.
And rotating your access keys frequently.
Oh, right, so don't keep the same passwords forever.
Exactly. Got to keep things fresh.
Makes sense. It's like that whole thing, like, don't use the same password for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Good security hygiene.
So it's like having a security checklist for your whole AWS setup.
Exactly. You got to be proactive, check for vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
make sure your defenses are up to date, make sure everything is locked down tight.
So it's not just about setting it and forgetting it.
No, not at all. It's an ongoing process.
Okay, so we've talked about the technical side, but this source also mentions something really interesting. The human element.
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
Because you can have the best tech in the world.
But if someone clicks on a phishing link...
It's all for nothing.
Exactly.
So what do they suggest for that?
Well, security awareness training for employees is really important.
Okay, so people know what to look out for.
Yeah, like those phishing emails, suspicious links.
Right.
Strong password policies are key, too.
So people aren't using password 123 for everything.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how often that happens.
And having a plan in case something does go wrong.
Exactly. Incident response.
Incident response, right?
You don't want to be caught off guard if there's a security breach.
No, definitely not. So it's about having the right tools in place, but also making sure that people are using them correctly.
Exactly. It's a two-pronged approach.
It's like having a state-of-the-art security system for your house,
Yeah.
but then leaving the front door wide open.
Exactly. It defeats the purpose.
You can't just rely on the technology. You got to have the human element, too.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Exactly. And the source, it does a great job of highlighting that.
So it's a constantly evolving landscape, right?
Absolutely.
You can't just do it once and think you're good.
No way.
You got to stay on top of it.
New threats are emerging all the time.
Yeah, it's almost like an arms race, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Between the good guys and the bad guys.
The good guys are always trying to stay one step ahead.
Which means we have to keep learning, too.
Exactly.
So we've talked about a lot, but I have one last question.
Okay.
Where do we even begin?
Yeah, like where do you even begin with all this stuff?
Like, it's a lot.
It can feel overwhelming.
Exactly.
But the source actually addresses that.
Okay, good.
They say that it's really important to like start with the basics of how AWS works.
Okay, so even if I'm not like a tech person, I should still have some understanding of that.
Exactly. Like you don't have to be a mechanic to know that driving with bald tires is a bad idea, right? It's just common sense.
Okay.
And understanding those fundamental pieces of AWS, how it all fits together, especially when it comes to security, it can really help you make smarter choices about how you use cloud services overall.
Right, that makes sense. So beyond this source we've been talking about, are there any other resources you'd recommend for someone who wants to learn more about AWS security?
Oh, yeah, definitely. AWS has a ton of great stuff on their website. It's all free, too.
Oh, nice. Like what?
They've got a whole section called AWS Training and Certification.
Okay, cool.
And they even have a course specifically about security fundamentals.
That's awesome. That's perfect. What about if you're interested in the, like, ethical hacking side of things?
Oh, yeah. For that, there's Paku that we talked about earlier. But there are also some really cool online platforms like Hack the Box and Try Hack Me.
Okay, I've heard of those.
They have those capture the flag challenges. Those are really fun.
Yeah, the CTFs. Those are intense, though.
They can be, yeah.
But fun.
Yeah, it's a great way to get some hands-on experience.
Right, in a safe environment.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you can kind of like Test out your skills and not worry about,
Breaking the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's like gamifying security training.
Pretty much, yeah.
I like it. It seems like there are a ton of resources out there for people
Oh, yeah, definitely.
who want to learn about cloud security.
The cybersecurity community is actually super welcoming, too.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, there are lots of online forums and blogs and social media groups and things where you can connect with other people who are into security.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's a good community to be a part of.
That's really cool. This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening, honestly.
Yeah, it's been fun.
We went from feeling kind of intimidated by cloud security
Yeah, I get that.
to, now I feel like I could actually go out and learn this stuff and be more proactive about my own security.
That's awesome. That's what we want.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And remember, security, it's not a one-time thing.
Right.
It's a journey. You're constantly learning, constantly adapting.
Because the bad guys aren't just going to give up, right?
Exactly. They're always coming up with new tricks.
Well, they say the best defense is a good offense.
That's true in this case, for sure.
So as we wrap up, is there one big takeaway you want our listeners to remember from our deep dive into AWS Basic 101 for hackers?
Absolutely. Cloud security is everybody's responsibility.
It's not just for the IT guys.
Nope, not anymore.
Interesting.
It doesn't matter if you're a developer or a business owner or just someone who uses cloud services every day.
Yeah.
We all have a part to play in keeping our data safe.
I like that. Well said.
We all need to be aware of the risks and take steps to protect ourselves.
Couldn't agree more. So, to everyone listening, stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep learning.
Absolutely. And we'll see you next time.